Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. Today's video will be one on revolutions, or more precisely, how to convey revolutions to the written form. Before I begin talking about the topic of the video, I think it's helpful to define terms. What exactly do I mean when I say revolution? I could go into some complicated political dictionary definition in order to answer that, but it is not necessary. But it's not directly necessary for your story for me to do so. So instead, I'm just going to go with a somewhat easily transferable colloquial definition, and therefore, for the sake of this video, a revolution is any kind of large-scale political action that results in the or political event that leads to the incumbent political regime being overturned. Not just deposed or changed, but altered entirely. Modern democracies change the people at the top all the frickin' time, and no one calls it a revolution whenever that happens. It's not enough to just change the people at the top in order for something to be a revolution. You also have to change the means by which the people who arrive at the top actually get there. That could also mean either increasing or shrinking the number of positions available at the top, and in fact, often does. Also, I'm going to keep my language throughout this video as neutral as possible in order to account for both violent revolutions as well as peaceful revolutions. A lot of people think that revolutions are inherently violent, but I'm not sure if they really have to be. But because I don't want to wade into that particular debate just now, I want to keep it. I want to keep it as neutral as I can for now. The first question one needs to ask is, what constitutes a reason for someone to join a revolution? Why would any character want to involve themselves in something that is potentially very dangerous and certainly quite uncertain? Well, to answer that, I'll defer to what Natalie Wynn, aka ContraPoints, once said. Political dissent often starts with the vaguest feeling that something is wrong. What is that wrong thing? I don't know. I am not your character, and I don't know what your world is like. However, whatever character is involved within a revolutionary group should be able to answer to that. Should be able to give a reason why they have joined the group. Because after all, the consequences and ramifications of revolutions can have actions far beyond the lifetimes of their participants. It is not something one does unless they have a very good reason to, unless their motivation is sufficiently strong. Note, this doesn't mean that this doesn't mean that their motivation is inherently complex, and in fact, for many people, their political motivations aren't really complex. But they are strongly held, and they have strong motivations to want to participate in that in such a revolution. Do those motivations have to be exactly the same for all the characters? Well, no, of course not, because people are different, and therefore will have different things that annoy them. And I don't just mean that everyone who opposes a government should have somewhat similar motivations. It can in fact be possible, and has in fact often happened, that a given political regime can be opposed for varying different reasons by a whole bunch of wildly different groups. The question therefore becomes, what differentiates the groups that succeed from the ones that don't? The answer in one word: support. the groups that succeed in revolutionary action are the groups that manage to gather enough support to where they can challenge the status quo. A mistake a lot of people make at this point is to assume that support means raw numbers, that it means that a majority or plurality of the general populace is willing to provide assistance, be it for logistical, economic, or even defensive operations. AKA, they mistake a revolution for a popular uprising. While revolutions often are popular uprisings as well, another common method of gathering support is by appealing to the most influential people within the society who also have a reason to oppose it, and therefore gather them as dissenters. Within certain circles, it's kind of a joke that the United States was founded because a whole bunch of rich people didn't want to pay taxes, but it is not untrue. Another example of this can be found almost a century earlier in Great Britain. The Glorious Revolution didn't happen because the majority of the general populace wanted it to happen, but because the English nobility wanted it to happen. And even then, not even all the nobility, just the ones in southern England, or the ones that are most directly involved. The opinions of the other nobles are a bit of a mystery to me at the moment. Speaking of the Glorious Revolution, another thing to consider is foreign involvement within your revolutionary activity. Because after all, a government can have both domestic enemies as well as foreign ones, and it is not unheard of for these two enemy categories to work together. I mentioned the United States and its revolution before. Well, now I'm mentioning them again because they were supported in their Revolutionary War by the French and by several German states. And then almost or around 2 centuries later, the United States the United States itself supported various anti-communist and anti-socialist movements around the globe, most notoriously in Latin America. For the sake of your story, however, I think it would be more interesting, and I think that is something you're considering as well, to write a revolution from the boots on the ground perspective, from the view of the average citizen who sees their government as being inherently damaging, and who thinks that doing something is preferable to just doing nothing and waiting for the best to come. I would suggest you explore that, and also maybe explore how the revolutionary group they join or found gather support, not just from the general populace, but maybe among other revolutionary groups as well. Do not, however, make the mistake of assuming that just because two groups have a common enemy, that makes them natural allies. After all, there is a reason why the members of Faction A didn't join Faction B, whatever that is. If these two factions are to work together, they will have some kinks to iron out. Be they when it comes to the goals they have, whether or not they share certain goals, or whether or not the goals they do in fact follow are compatible, or if it comes to their methodology, or what kind of methods do they want to use, how do they plan to accomplish their goals, and to what extent they can be, and to what extent they are really compatible with these goals thereafter. Speaking of methods, what could a revolutionary group do in order to accomplish its goals? I already outlined a dichotomy at the beginning of this video, that you can either do a revolution through peaceful means or through violent means. However, these two categories aren't as clear-cut as I'm really making them out. And in fact, it's not unheard of for a revolutionary group to attempt to gain power through both violent and peaceful means. and it is not uncommon for a group to emphasize one group of actions and then another. Modern Turkey, for instance, was founded by a group that started out violent and then turned peaceful. And also Nelson Mandela, in his first civil rights endeavors back in the middle of the last century, started out with peaceful protests and then turned violent, which is why he was also initially arrested. FYI. Whatever methods you choose to highlight within your story, you should also take care of how the revolution itself actually unfolds. I can't really give you any advice when it comes to that. However, if you've gone through the other steps I've highlighted in this video, you should know who the people involved in the revolution are, what kind of support they can rely upon, and therefore what means can they use in order to accomplish whatever goals they've decided for themselves. Therefore, you should be able to assess how well they can move and employ information, material, and people in order to help further these goals. I really could go on and on about this topic, and I think I've barely scratched the surface. But that is really all I can say for now. I might return to it in the future, but for now I want to say thank you for your attention. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and maybe share it wherever you think other people will like it as well. If there is anything you'd like to add to anything I said in this video, the comment section awaits your input. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My own book, Heir to the Empire, the Next Generation, is available at all the major retailers, most of which you can find in a master link in the description down below. Until next time, happy holidays from myself, Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.